First of all, thank you all for coming out here at my request to be able to talk to you all a little bit more related to the triple homicide we had on the 16th. I want to start with this. The focal point today is giving you guys as clear as facts about what's happening, because I've already seen different stories come out. There's dialogue that this was an active shooter event and 7 people are suspended for active shooter failures. That's not the case. This was a domestic violence incident that happened to turn catastrophically bad, where an individual killed his wife and 2 individuals. In the process of looking at this internal affairs, in the process of looking at the homicide, we end up opening up an internal affairs investigations to identify any shortcomings that may have occurred in the investigative process from the patrol standpoint and within the Detective Bureau assigned out in Tamarac. And that's why we're here. We're here to give you some clarity. For many of you in the room, you've been with me in this room for the last 6 years. And if you think back to 2019, one of the things I told this community was that when I know, they will know, and that this agency will remain a transparent and accountable organization, not just when we're doing things great, but when we come up short. And I'm going to start with that. It is clear, based on the preliminary information I've been able to acquire so far from our investigators within the Office of Inspector General and Internal Affairs, we fell short on this one. We fell short in a response in terms of how some of the patrol personnel had documented certain facts related to calls going back to December. It's clear that some of the investigative practices conducted by detectives was also a shortfall. And so as we're continuing to gather more facts on this, I'm going to end up back in front of this camera. Make no mistake about it. Because I want to make sure this community continues to trust us and know that when we get this stuff wrong, people are going to be held accountable, and I'm going to step up and own every bit of it. So that's where we are at with this. Currently, there are 7 members, 7 total, that had some involvement with this investigation that are out on suspension right now and on administrative leave until we can come to a final course of action in terms of this investigation. 1 is a lieutenant, 2 sergeants, and 4 deputies. Again, that's 1 lieutenant, 2 sergeants, 4 deputies. If you need names and things of that nature, you can get that from Vita after the conference. This is as short as I can get, and I'll roll over, and I think it's probably going to be more appropriate to take a few questions if I can. Keep in mind, I cannot disclose or start talking about the homicide investigation, and there's minimum things that I can present in terms of the internal affairs. We'll start here. I think that is an accurate assessment and that we could have done more from what I've been able to analyze. I'll start with some of the first things that I've been able to witness and look at. From the original call for service that occurred back in October, because we're going way back, folks. We're not just looking at isolated incidents. We have a robust list of all the calls for services that occurred at that site location, either coming from the husband or coming from the wife or any other member that had any concern. What I witnessed in October, the first call that came out was related to a tracker. I saw some of your stories. You're accurate in that assessment. It's clear that we probably could have done more in that element, and that's what we're looking at in terms of what the deputies' responsibilities were at that time. These aren't shortcomings of policies, procedures, training, or equipment. From my assessment, this is really just a shortcoming of performance, whether it be complacency, not taking a greater interest, and not doing their due diligence to make sure that they're documenting everything in an accurate manner so that when it does arrive in the investigator's hand, they have a comprehensive report that will allow them to make better judgment and decisions. That's one start. The second aspect is the call in December that we had where a deputy went out to the scene and spent 35 minutes and 34 seconds, because I watched every bit of it on a body-worn camera, assessing and talking to the victim, talking to Mary, gathering information from her. And it was very robust in terms of the threat spectrum that exists, the totality of times that she had made related to, I fear that he's going to kill me, etc. And at that time, based on the evidence and things that were presented, there was enough there where we could have potentially pursued a probable cause affidavit so we can arrest him and take him off the street. And that didn't happen. We know that. The other elements that I'll be able to talk a little bit about is when this case finally made it to the assigned detective in the district. We're looking at that. There has been a multitude of shortcomings from my perspective that I know from being an investigator, having worked cases where things could have been done a lot better and they were not done. And so that's why I prompted and called for this internal affairs investigation, because on the surface, just seeing some of the things we found in the first couple hours, remember 24 hours, we were already looking into this. It was clear that no, we're going to have to address this one. We're going to have to come to the public and let them know what the hell happened. Well, I can tell you this. You mentioned Sergeant Allen, correct? He is also one that's currently suspended, and we're examining the totality of it. So for going back to clarity, you asked one question that had 2 parts. The first part, no, it's not an active shooter incident. The way we classify active shooter incidents across this country under Department of Homeland Security protocols and the FBI, that would not qualify. The individual conducted a homicide, and then he stalked additional victims and killed them independently. But there wasn't an open air environment where he's actively shooting at random people that has no participating role in that particular criminal pattern that he took. Does that make sense? The entire performance protocols is what we're looking at, and I don't want to jump ahead of this. Let me get to this real quick. There will be people that will lose their job over this. And I'm focused on making sure that they don't win a damn arbitration, because that happens too repeatedly in this profession, where individuals out in other states, after I fire someone, determine that they want this person back in our county and in this community. I've dealt with that numerous times throughout my career here as a sheriff. And so I don't want to put out any information about the standing of this investigation, because when I have to make the final decision that members are going to be terminated, I don't want them back here. Roy, you bring thank you. That's a very good point, okay? I hate that we have to talk about the shortcomings, because our tactical team out there, our SWAT team, did a remarkable job on the hostage rescue and saving that young kid's life and making sure it didn't escalate to a potential active shooter in any other environment. But we can't highlight that when I know there's other shortcomings. And because of those other shortcomings, it forced me to go far back as we can from the first few calls of service that came in. And as we're analyzing every single one of those calls, going over a year ago, we're starting to see things where we probably should have done better. Let me backtrack a little bit. Early on, there was a call for service in which we were able to come out there and seize all the weapons for an injunction violation. Then there was a second call for service that came out after the injunction was basically null and void because of the victim had elected to go in that path. And then those guns were returnable, in the sense that he had the right to receive them. And then this rose into how many more other calls for services did he receive since the second time since he received his weapons back, and whether or not there was enough evidence there for us to take him a second time and a third time, or retain those weapons to keep him out of his hands. Again, we did not collect any of those weapons that I have in front of me right now in terms of the second injunction, but this is within this investigation. I want to know, why didn't we do it? Who was the detective assigned? Did they file the proper paperwork with the courts? These are all the processes that we're looking at. And like I said, if we have to do a round 2 or 3 of this, we most certainly are going to do it and tell the community what they need to hear. I can tell you what I've witnessed so far. This isn't a matter of a relationship element or a deputy showing favor. This is just a matter of what I've seen of piss poor performance, complacency, and people not doing their due diligence to ensure that all the checks and balances that we put in place in this agency over the last 6 years, we have stopped several active shooter incidents. We've investigated over 5,000 cases. We divert over 2,500 individuals towards mental health care. We created a threat management division that works 24/7, 365. So there's enough resources in this agency to support every single law enforcement officer across this entire county beyond BSO, because we have supported and investigated hundreds of cases in Fort Lauderdale and Coconut Creek and Margate. And so it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating for me to have to stand here and witness this and know that we're an organization who has had our trials, from one active shooter event to the airport to Stoneman Douglas to one tragedy after the next. And this administration, we put forth everything necessary to be successful. And it's inexcusable that individuals fail to perform their job. And it's not an excuse within anything from administration to policies to protocols to training. It's just bullshit work by other officers. Look, I don't want the public to lose faith that we can't do this when we're handling thousands and thousands of calls per service. We were over 700,000 calls per services every year just in our law enforcement division. That is an indicator that we're going to be successful handling our cases. So to the public, to the community, to those mothers and women out there who think that we're going to drop the ball and this is a consistent pattern, know this. When we rectify this situation, I'm going to send the fear of God amongst this entire agency to make damn sure we don't do this again. Because this death is on my watch. It's on my watch. I'm the sheriff of this county. I'm responsible. 2 times this community voted me in this office because of the way I perform, because I hold people accountable. I've terminated over 75 employees since I've been here, investigated the whole agency under the PPP scandal. I'm not shy away from holding us accountable. I'm not shy about taking an aggressive tone when we fail. There's 2 million people in this county that are counting on us every day to do our job. I fight for the funding, I fight for the equipment, now they have to fight for this community and perform. or they're not going to survive here. No, I'll start and work backwards. So the Amber Alert, I didn't see any issues there. If something comes up over the next couple of days as our investigators are analyzing this more, we'll come back and talk about it. But on the surface, that was not an issue. As far as the shortcoming, all 7, this is related to the most recent call for service going back from going back from October, December 29th, and of course our response going out there on the tragic day. You had one other in the middle and I lost it. What was your second one? I think there was somewhat of a delay in terms of finding them, but the discovery aspect, if you look at it, she was fearful, she was running for her life, she's going from one spot location to the next. So that takes time to be able to discover exactly where is the incident location, where is the final resting place, unfortunately, for the victim. That, I'm not going to micromanage that, right? There's some things that just take time. That's just the nature of doing business. But what I won't shy away from is the shortcomings in terms of investigative practices at the officer level and the detective level. And by the way, this investigation will include every single administrator from the captain to district commander all the way down. No one is going to get a pass on this. And if anyone falls short, they will not survive this. Absolutely. This is a devastating time for them. And it's hard to stand here non-emotional, and forgive the profanity that I dropped momentarily. It's very difficult because I hold these people close to my heart when they die. I read every report. I look at every single tragedy. And I'm a human being like everyone else in this room. And when I know we could have done better and we didn't do better, and this wasn't a matter of not properly funded or all these other things that historically has just failed this community, this isn't it. This is just individuals not doing what they're supposed to do. So I'm regrettably sorry to bring that to this family because they're hearing this right now. And it doesn't bring any solace to them. It only hurts them even more. Because I'm basically saying we had a chance to save your loved one's life and we failed. No, but that'll be part of the overall investigation. I can tell you, looking at the notes and bullet points that came through, it looked like dozens of calls for services over a span of a couple years, where it's just been one conflict after the next, whether the husband's reporting the wife, now she's reporting him, and so on and so forth. But it is a robust amount of calls for service. I honestly couldn't answer all that because we're running 2 things here, right? There's a homicide investigation that have to get all the factual elements together related to weapons used, crime scene, all those different complexities. So I don't want to navigate into that realm. And then the second side of it is that you talked about was whether or not when we issued the guns back, there's a timeline that was assessed on, and it was in compliance with the courts, right? I know our general counsel was involved in that. There was, information going back and forth as to whether or not we can release the weapons, should we release them, and at the end of the day, we had the legal obligation to return those weapons back. There's a lot of varying things there, right? It's not a policy element in terms of when you take it back, because when we do our risk protection orders and we're following these things, the courts are also involved in that process, right? So the biggest thing I look at is, did we follow all the procedural elements to submit this one in a timely manner? Was the document in which we submitted comprehensive enough where a judge, whether it be a warrant or anything else, would analyze it and look at it and say, this is thorough enough, let's move forward? And I don't see that happening. I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to wait for my investigators to come forth and bring me another information. You're going through theoretical hypotheticals, right? I have to get the facts lined up first before I can make a decision and tell you with 1,000% certainty, yes, it should have. When my investigators come to me and they say, yep, Sheriff X, Y, and Z should have been done, it wasn't done, then I'll have a better answer for you. Any names, information, stuff like that you need, Vita will give you guys a printout for it. And like I said, if we have to come back, we'll come back. To the community, I just want to leave them with some level of assurance, just letting them know that we understand where our shortcomings were in this incident and that we're going to get them right. Thank you.